What is up, YouTube? Today we're going to be talking about Moonlight 5-star units in the game. As you guys can see, there are a ton of ML 5-stars now. We've come a long way ever since Epic 7 has released. And even myself, I am missing quite a few, especially really strong ones, right? I'm missing ML Senya, ML Tywin. What are some other ones that are good? ML Ken, Euphine, Flan, Blood Moon Haste. So a lot of the good ones I'm missing. But we're just going to be talking about currently, this is prior to ML or New Moon Luna's release. We're going to be talking about the top 5 ML 5-star units, in my opinion, especially for PvP, because ML units are mostly going to be centered around that. So at number 5, we have Conqueror Lias. So it's kind of interesting that she's at number 5 now. She used to be number 1, probably for like the longest amount of time. But now she's at number 5. She's still very good. She's been out for about like 3 years now, I think almost 3 years. And she's still very meta, especially in PvP, and she's one of the best units for PvE. And the reason why she's so good in PvE is because of her S1. You have a dual attack from a random ally, very powerful. You also have your Vigor buff, which gives you attack and defense. Probably the most broken buff you can get in the game, just because attack makes you do more damage and defense makes you tankier. So you just become stronger in terms of attack and defense. Also, you will reduce buff durations and also decrease attack. And you also have this redirected provoke that also pushes back CR for other enemy openers with the barriers. So very flexible unit, extremely powerful for like Hall of Trials, also for Ancient Inheritance. But in PvP, she's still very powerful as well, especially in Guild Wars defense. You can use her in Arena defense as well. And in World Arena RTA, she's still pickable. She's not as, first pick, essential anymore because there's a lot of counters to her. But even against her counters, she works fine. And I think she solidifies herself at the number 5 spot for being one of the best ML 5-stars in the game for both PvP and PvE. Number 4, we have Zeo. So Zeo is going to be only for PvP. From 4 and up, 4 to 1, it's all going to be PvP units, but they're very good there. So Zeo is extremely powerful because of his passive. At the start of the first battle, which is basically at the start of the battle, you'll gain 20% CR, and this can't get reduced by stuff like Politis and Abyssal Euphine. So essentially what that means is you're guaranteed to take the first turn. So if you go against like a Ran, a Peyra, anything that cleaves, and you pick Zeo, you kind of force them to ban your Zeo because he will take the first turn. If you have him at 260 speed, he'll outspeed, even like 320 speed units. And you just have your CR pushed up. You have your S3, which will silence the enemy, remove immunity buffs, and also push their CR back by 30%. And this does a ton of damage. It gives him Deify, which will give him extra crit chance and also make him take less damage. And his S1, Let Me Destroy You, pretty worthy of the name, honestly. It's a single target attack that gives him attack buff, and when you're deified, you'll have an extra attack, and this extra attack does so much damage, it's ridiculous. You have Deify, which will make you have more crit chance, so you can build more crit damage and attack on him. It also penetrates defense, and if you kill an enemy with it, you'll CR push yourself up again, so he just kind of cycles over and over. It makes him a perfect answer to Cleave, because Cleave units are very squishy. Cleave is like very aggressive units that are very squishy, they just like to go fast. You one-shot them with your S1, you CR push yourself up, you just keep cycling over and over, which is pretty insane. All the while you have Deify, which makes you very tanky. Now it does get countered by units like Savior Aiden. Savior Aiden will one-shot through his Deify passive, but he's still very good against Cleave, so very good against Cleave and also very good with Cleave, right? It makes sense. He's guaranteed to take the first turn. You just pair him with like a Requiem Rowana or a Blooming Lidica, right? And they just do wonders with Zeo. So extremely versatile unit, very good for Cleave, very good against Cleave. Even if you don't want to play Cleave, you're not against Cleave, if you pick him, you can secure yourself the first turn. It makes him very good against even standard team comps where you want to, take the first turn. And in that situation, you most likely want to have him on a high effectiveness build, so you can actually push back enemy openers as well. Next up at number 3, we have Blood Moon Haste, and this is very funny because, a couple months ago, he was one of the worst ML 5-stars in the game, if not the worst. But after his buffs, he's extremely powerful, right? His passive got reworked, he always penetrates defense now. He also will grant a barrier and immunity for 2 turns now instead of 1 to all allies when an ally dies, and you'll gain your grant yourself Blood Aura. And Blood Aura is going to be a buff that gives you effectiveness and speed, pretty cool. But the big thing is your S3. So the S3, that was a single target nuke, removes all buffs now. And if you kill an enemy with this, you'll revive all your allies and also give them immortality. So very similar to like Spirit Eye Celine's S3 if you kill an enemy with it. And you're gonna see when you're granted Blood Aura, which is granted when an ally dies, you will do 100% extra damage. And this hits very, very hard, especially with Blood Aura. So it makes him a very good revenge killer. And you're gonna notice that everything scales with health, so you build him very tanky, and it takes forever to kill him, so he soaks a lot of damage for your team. And also, if you ignore him and kill another ally, you give him Blood Aura, and then he just S3s and revives them. So it makes him very annoying to deal with. You have to choose between focusing him down and wasting a lot of time, or killing his allies and giving him Blood Aura. So it makes him very powerful. The best way to deal with him is actually putting Unbuffable on him, or even like to the enemy team. So that's like a good way to do it. But if you don't have access to that, like an Angel of Light, you're in a tough spot. Also, his S1, pretty strong attack, also will heal all of his allies now when you actually strip a buff with it, and it's just very strong. So yeah, pretty strong damage dealer that's very tanky now with a lot of utility. Honestly, his kit is just super overloaded. He does a ton of damage. He's very tanky because everything scales with health, and you don't need to build any crit, and you penetrate defense, which is insane, and you have this S3 to revive your teammates. So one of the best units right now. You'll see him all the time in RTA World Arena. Also very good in Guild Wars offense and defense. So if you have him, and you pulled for him, or you had him from the past, definitely want to build him. He's super strong for PvP right now. And at number 2, we have Dragon Bride Senya. So some people think that she should be number 1 because she's just so good in RTA and Guild Wars defense, even just pretty much everywhere. But the thing is, I think ML Politis, which we'll talk about at the number 1 spot, spoiler, is just a little bit better, and we'll talk about why. But ML Senya, Dragon Bride Senya, very powerful, right? Ton of damage with her S3. She protects the backline ally that you have in the back row very well, because she gives them a barrier and dispels all debuffs from them if they get hit below 50%. So she synergizes extremely well with Janua. They're like a match made in heaven. Actually, the most common defense team you'll see right now that's destroying everyone is Senya, ML Politis, and Janua. And they just kind of work all very well together, right? ML Politis gives Janua Rage, Dragon Bride Senya protects him, and it's just very annoying. The barrier is super big. You also have Oath of Punishment, which will do 25 extra damage, fixed damage to the target, and that works with her S3. Her S3 becomes AoE, and yeah, it's just very strong. She does a ton of damage. The only thing is, reason why I don't think she's as great is because you need her on this artifact. So if you don't have 3F, if you don't have this maxed out, and this is from Overlord collab, so you actually can't get it until this reruns, which will probably take like another year or like even 2 years. You can't really use her as well. You can use her on like an Aureus build on protection set, but the 3F build is just so much better because it makes her hit super hard, right? And I just collected chess pieces from my background battle, which is interesting. But yeah, you kind of need her to be on that artifact to be very strong, which is why I think that's why she's at number 2. And honestly, she does have more counters than ML Politis. I think ML Politis is just very hard to deal with unless you have very specific units, which we'll talk about now. And number 1, to no one's surprise, because we just talked about her and because you probably see her all the time everywhere in Guild Wars defense, arena defense, and RTA, is ML Politis. The most recently released opener will have ML Luna come out after her, and I think ML Luna will also counter ML Politis, so ML Luna will probably be the best after this new banner comes out, which we'll talk about when it does. But she's very strong, right? She has that AoE rage buff for your team, which works with like Ambitious Tywin and Janua especially. And she also can dispel buffs, decrease speed, and also CR pushback, which is insane. So not only do you push back their speed and strip their buffs, you also will decrease their speed and then also buff your speed, your team speed, which makes it so that your team laps very fast, right? She also has this passive. So this passive is one of the most broken passives in the game. Decrease the amount of resources gained by the enemy by 50%. So Vissu Euphine, Navy Captain Landy, Lionheart Ceremia, ML Bologna, 4 of the most common DPS units that were in the meta, especially for like RTA, they all get countered by this passive, which is insane. It takes them forever to build up their resources now, where they're like fighting spirit and stuff like that, which makes it so that, you know, she kind of just counters them. Also, you have stealth every turn and at the start of battle, which makes it so that Zio can't even counter her. You basically have Guiding Light built in. You have an artifact built into your passive, which is insane. It makes her very annoying to deal with and just very sticky on the field. Next, we have her S1. If it doesn't get any worse, she has this attack that will dispel 1 buff, actually very powerful. 100% to dispel 1 buff is insane, right? If you think about like Adventure Ross, it's like 75%. And back when he was strong in PvP, that was still pretty strong, his S1. Now it's 100% on C-Fan and Politis' S1. And you're going to see when you're enraged, which is from your S3 rage buff, you will trigger a dual attack, not from a random ally, with an ally with the highest attack. So very powerful. This is the most broken unit for PvP in the game. I think the top 3 are very close: Sea Phantom Politis, Blood Moon Haste, and Dragon Bride Senya. But in my opinion, I think ML Politis takes the cake. So let me know in the comments down below what your personal top 5 ranking is and your reasoning. And hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.